Hey, this is Kineer. Welcome to a Dune Awakening video. We are less than 72 hours from the Head Start launch on June 5th. We just got some big news on private servers, which I have in another video as well. But I was already going to make a video today. This video is going to be let's say 3 recommendations, 8 tips, and maybe a bonus tip at the end on how to start the game, get off to a great start, and really kind of settle into HAGGA Basin South and get a good foundation in place. I'm going to give you 3 recommendations up front, which are things I would think about before I even started the game, or in the first stage when you're doing the character creator, things like that. And then I'm going to go through some tips that I think are going to lead to a solid foundation and a really enjoyable experience as you build up your character, learn how to play, establish your own combat loop, and your familiarity with the game in HAGGA Basin South. So the first thing I'm going to suggest to you is, and this is my first recommendation, is if you are, let's say, desperate to get to the deep desert or just longing for the Landsraad, and your goal is to rush through content as quickly as possible so you can say that you have arrived at some point in the game, this is probably not a video that's going to help you. I don't think that's actually going to be in the cards for you. This is a video probably for people who are willing or interested in taking a PvE approach to this, a little more casual up front, who want to explore the game. You know what you paid for, and you want to go ahead and get the value out of it as you move along. You can, at any point in time, decide that you've had enough of HAGGA Basin South and go north and keep moving through the same content that was available through the beta and beyond into more. And I know if you've played the beta, you may have seen this area inside and out. You may know lots of things about it, and it may not be that interesting. But if you're new to the game, or if you haven't even bought it yet, and you're thinking, okay, it's a couple days away, maybe I want to do that. I'm going to give you some suggestions about how to really, I think, enjoy the first zone in the game, and then move on from there with a really fantastic position going forward. Now, I am also going to mention that I do this from the vantage point of having watched all the developer live streams, played in the beta. I've got 30 plus hours up on YouTube of live stream of me in the beta. And I've gone through lots of other videos on how to do these fast starts and things like that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those. And, some of that I think is very valuable, and I learned a lot and enjoyed it. And some of it I think you can just kind of leave on the wayside. So that's my first recommendation. Don't rush if you really don't feel like you need to rush. Like if you're not in that group that just has to get to the top because that's your real goal, or if you're not in a large guild that has a lot of plans, then play the game that you want to play the game. So my second tip is about the classes, and I think this is a really important tip at this point in time. I'm going to turn the volume down on this a little bit. Pardon me for a minute. I'm a little blasty here. This is video from one of my earlier playthroughs, so we're going to skip that right here. I think this might be my Bene Gesserit playthrough. I did play as Mentat on one, and then I came back through before the beta was up and did Bene Gesserit for a while. But so anyway, let's talk about the classes. It's perfect timing for that. A lot of the advice so far about what class to pick has been based on the fact that the beta was only going to have so many zones, and a lot of people only got access to the first 20 or 30 hours. And the first thing people recognize right off the bat is there's a planetologist trainer you can unlock in the first zone, the very zone we're talking about, and a trooper trainer. So naturally people said, well, pick one of the others, pick the Bene Gesserit or the Swordmaster or the Mentat, because you're not going to have access to them, and you wanted to do that. I think you can set all that stuff aside now, because when the game comes out, when the Head Start starts on June 5th, and when the game fully launches on June 10th, we will be able to have all the trainers. Maybe not on day one, maybe not the first hours of the game. You're still going to have to advance through HAGGA Basin, this large PvE area, and that's still going to take some time, but you're going to be able to get to all of them. So I think this is the time, and that's my recommendation. Recommendation number 2 is to think about your actual play style, what you like, and play the way you like. If you are a melee player, and that is what you like in a lot of different games, the Swordmaster is a great option. It's kind of hard to beat. And, it's one of those where everybody, kept saying, well, the Swordmaster trainer is going to be pretty far away, so you could pick it up front. But the Swordmaster is pure melee and a great choice. If you are on the opposite end of the spectrum and you want to play Trooper, even though Trooper's in the starting area, play the Trooper. Heavy weapons, guns, just bring in the firepower to every fight. It's a lot of fun, and starts with, mobility options like with the Shigor Cloud, things like that. And then in between, like I played the Mentat player because it's kind of a long-range sniper focused with a little bit of technology edge. I enjoyed that. I also played the Bene Gesserit, which was more on the melee leaning. but with some really interesting, let's say, extra abilities to influence other people, control other people, and also to control your own body and health and regeneration, things like that. I thought both of those were a lot of fun. So play what you want to play. That's my second recommendation. The third recommendation, and again, this is early, this is before you even get into the desert and are playing the game, is the first time you play the game, you will go through a tutorial, and I don't think that's skippable. If you play another character later, they do give you an option on the tutorial. The tutorial is a very short piece at the beginning of the game. It is not the guided journey that takes place throughout this entire zone in the early parts of the game and even later. So there is a guided journey that happens along the way. There's a character called Zantara, and we'll talk about him a lot later, who will make suggestions to you, do this and this. And one of the things you're going to be asked as you're starting the game and when you select your world and server that you want to join into is, do you want to unlock the research tree? Now, there are two options. You leave it locked or you unlock it, and you have more choices. Now, the research tree is already sort of locked in the game. It's gated. There are certain things you cannot unlock until you spend enough points in one area or another. And that's all well and fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So they don't want you to, they don't want you to take these kind of scarce intel points or these points that you have early on and, unlock things that you won't be able to build or use. And that's actually probably a reaction to problems they had in the beta where they saw players that were kind of going too far in the wrong direction. So you can leave it locked when you play the game. I did that the first time through. I'm pretty sure that meant that I spent 4 or 5 hours unlocking things by following the quests and the objectives that the game developers had in mind. And I don't have any regrets over that. It was great. Going through again, I will unlock it because it does give me some earlier access to some technology, and I can make that decision. And as long as I'm cautious about where I put my points, I shouldn't get myself trapped. I shouldn't get myself in a position where I'm like, oh, I need more points here to make this, to get this piece of technology that I really need in order to advance. So think about that unlocking the research piece. If you are an experienced, if you're an experienced player in these types of games, and you're going to take your time and think about where you spend your points and maybe hold some back all the time so that, maybe you'll learn something in the future. That's not a terrible option to have. If you are the type who wants somebody to say, okay, you have 4 points now, you're supposed to spend these 3, and you just do that and you build the thing they tell you, and then you get another 3 points and they tell you to do that. That's a good route too. Leave it locked. Okay. Those are my 3 recommendations. You don't have to rush. If you are rushing, this is probably not the most helpful advice. To play the class you want, play what you enjoy playing. They're all available now, and we don't need to be burdened by any of the, let's say, the assumptions that came from the beta and only having access to 20 hours of content. And then the third is unlock the research menu. If you want the flexibility and you think you understand how some of the technology is going to work out, because maybe you've watched a lot of videos and you have learned something along the way. There's nothing wrong with that as well. So let's get to the tips. And I think I have at least 7 tips, but I think it's 8 actually. So I call it 8 tips. So 3 recommendations, 8 tips, and maybe a bonus at the end. The first tip that I'm going to give you is to follow Zantara's advice. And the video I have in the background here is some of my gameplay, and he's going to guide you through the process and talk to you on a communicator. Basically, he's tutorializing a lot of the early stuff, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with following his advice. He's going to say, pick up certain materials, build certain items, etc., until a very specific point. And this is what I'm going to warn you about, because I do believe there's a good recommendation to be made here. At some point, he's going to say, you should research a construction tool, make one, and build a subfief. And at this point, he's telling you to build a base. And for me, I want to hold off on building that base until I get closer to a specific point on the map. And I'm actually going to pause this video and I'm going to show you a map real quickly that I have here as well. Let me see if I can find it. There is the map. This is a map. And first of all, I want to give credit to, click over here so I can see it fully myself. I give credit to the awakening.wiki website, which has a nice interactive map. I actually have my own version of this map, and the overlay is all mine, but the wiki is very nice, and there should be credits in the description of the video as well. And so all the text on here I've added to this map. These are my own notes for what you can do in HAGGA Basin South. And so what I'm suggesting is he will tell you to build a base at some point in time. And when I first spawned in on my first game, I was pretty far out here to the left. Let me see. I'm not seeing my mouse out here, so I'm going to have to, let me turn this on right here. Yeah, that's better. That's much better. I had a map up and I can have the mouse up here. So I spawned in up here, like right above where my head is. And I was kind of doing all the entry level stuff in this area as well. The second time I played, they spawned me in down here somewhere, and I was pretty far out here. And what I learned was I really kind of wanted to be, this is a special area here. There's a lot of activity going on, and I wanted to be in this area right here. Now, I didn't notice the first time I was in the game, but after the second time and looking at it, there is a purple marker on the map, and I don't think it even has a description. It doesn't tell you what it is or why it's there, but there's a purple marker on the map, and it's in your directional compass at the top as soon as you start the game. And it is this cavern called Menoth Cavern, and it's part of the story, and I'm not going to spoil that. You'll follow along and you'll go there eventually, but when I started off over here, that marker was up here. When I started off over here, the marker was to the east and to the south. And ultimately, knowing what I eventually knew when I was able to fire off a survey probe into the air and get the whole thing mapped out, is I kind of wanted my base to be in this major triangle here somewhere. There's a lot of options, lots of places to go. However, if I'm following Zantara's advice, I could get to the point pretty easily where he says, build a base, and I just, threw it down out here, or I throw it down out here, and then I end up with a lot of footwork going on. So here's my advice. Follow Zantara's advice as he gives it to you, but be moving toward the purple marker inside your map. Even if you don't know what it is, even if he hasn't told you what you're going to be doing there, move to that area. And I like the purple marker for a couple of reasons, and this is a little bit of a spoiler. I'm just going to explain what's on the map here. In this top left-hand corner of the triangle, there is Griffin's Reach Trade Post, and you're going to be going there. It's going to be an important place in HAGGA Basin on an ongoing basis. In the center of this triangle is the Eco Lab, or the Imperial Testing Station. I think it's number 2. And on top of that is the planetology trainer. The trooper trainer is over here. You have to unlock him. On the far right corner is this shipwreck, which is PvE, but it has some important ingredients that you're going to need in order to build some things. And at the bottom of this, you're only going to go to this cavern one time as part of the story, and it's important and it's fun. I enjoyed it. But this entire cluster of what I'll call rock islands is really, really important in general, because there are some cool resources here, and I could go back here again and again, at least to one of these intel points, one of these structures. There are buildings here that have a circular icon, and they have 3 little houses inside of them. Those are more complex above ground structures or intel points. So they're buildings, they're full of hostile enemies, and inside them you'll find intel points and all sorts of different rewards. So I'm just going to stop at that point in time, and I'm going to say, follow Zantara's advice. That's tip number 1 until he says build a base. And when you want to build a base, try to get yourself somewhere in here. And I think anything in here is pretty good. You're going to eventually go north to the next zone through here. So having a base up here is nice. You're going to be going out here eventually. So having a base over here would be nice. And you're definitely going to be working through this area. So I don't think you can go wrong anywhere in this area. I don't try to put my base right next to the trade post, just because the trade post has some benefits, and the base also gives you shelter and a place to store your bike eventually too. And I'd like to have a base to hide my bike in a storm over here, and maybe have a base over here instead. So that said, you can do all the things that Zantara asks you. You can do some stuff in advance accidentally. There'll be more things to kill, more things to collect. If you find you're stuck in the quest and he says go build something, just make another one or collect more of it and do it again. It'll work out fine. And tip number 2 is tied to tip number 1. It's on the base building side. When he does say build a base, I still like to find a place that has 2 copper nodes nearby, because the copper nodes and all the nodes respawn really quickly. And from a resource perspective, I found that I needed a lot of copper and copper ingots to build a bunch of the resources inside my little base. I tend to build a 2x3 base. I think he tells you to build a 2x2. I build a 2x3 base. I usually put a double door on one side because I know I'm going to bring a Sandbike in. And then I also put ramps on the outside of it, so it's a little easier to bring my Sandbike in and out of the base. So I make it a little bigger. I keep it inside this circle somewhere. I also like to have a scavenger camp nearby. And these are the ones that are outside, usually on the side of a rock structure, and there's 2 enemies on them. And they've got a little camp and some loot boxes and some scrap metal items you can take apart. But I don't want to be right on top of them so close that whenever I walk out of my base, they all run over and, that both of them run over and fight me. But I like them within sight, because eventually we're going to move away, or pretty quickly, we're going to move away from, let's say, getting hydration from plants to harvesting the blood of enemies and processing it and turning it into water. So it's real nice to have copper nearby and a source of water nearby so we can process it and constantly have water in there. So those are the two things I care about. And then later, you know, like I said, if you're playing a little more casual pace and you're not going to rush north, if you're going to be making circuits of this area and you're going to stay here for a while, it is better to be kind of centrally located than it is to be out here on the far edge, right? It's just, you know, like it's a big loop to come through here and do all that. It's not terrible. You can work from anywhere, but that's my second tip. My third tip is the old Boy Scout motto, be prepared, something like that, right? Anytime I go out for an outing, it doesn't matter where I'm at. If I'm getting ready to go to some special place, I want to make sure my water condition is good. Once I have my own little base, always drink water, drink it out of the purifier, and get it as high as you can, and make sure you're feeding your purifier. If you have to in the middle of some major run, stop and go harvest some more, scavengers and bring them back in and take care of that. I also like to gather as much plant fiber as I can and make lots of bandages. Usually have a full stack of 20, maybe a little more than that on me. You get a lot of bandages when you're going through caves and other places, but I hate to run out. And, quite frankly, I don't want to be in a position where I do combat. I get in a habit of just constantly hitting a bandage. Sometimes even when I don't really need a lot of healing, I do that. And then the last part is darts. Unless you're going to be exclusive melee player and you're just going to go after everybody with a blade, you're almost always, everybody's going to use a gun and have darts. And I don't think that 1,000 darts is too many. I think that might be the full size of a stack. So if I have hundreds and hundreds of darts on me, I just keep making darts and I keep them with me. It means that, I can also really, take my time and shoot people at a distance and not worry that I'm running out of ammo, that kind of thing. So always be prepared. That's tip number 3, water, darts, bandages. And there's probably some other things as well. The fourth point is about, the fourth recommendation is about skill points and intel points. And depending on the kind of player you are, you might already do this pretty effectively. I know for me, there's always a balance of, well, should I hold on to some so that I have some when something new happens? Should I spend them right now? That kind of thing. And I talked a little bit about the intel points, and I'm going to point out on this map, again, shout out to the Awakening Wiki people, these little compasses here are indicators that these POIs have intel points. And usually when you mouse over them, it'll tell you whether you've already been there or not, and you've gotten it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's usually like 3 intel points. So there's like 12 intel points to pick up down here, in addition to the ones you get for leveling. There's a couple more out here, and then there's one over here and one over here. So that's what? That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20, 8 times 3, right? So at that point in time, you've got 24 intel points that you could pick up from that, plus the ones you get from leveling. And that's going to be enough to get you through the first couple of hurdles for unlocking technology, whether you have them nail down the research tree or control it or not. You're going to want those kind of points, and you're going to want to pick up these extra points. It's one of the reasons I also like this in the triangle is I clear these all out, and on top of that, and this is an important thing to point out, I've got markers on here that tell you that as you close through this. I go to Broken Stone Station because there is a recipe down here, a schematic for Aaron's Vengeance, which is a very nice rifle. Really, really like the rifle. That's not a problem. I go to Keyhole Rock because there's a 33% chance, and this is a random drop, of getting Old Sparky, which is an improved power pack, or Sims Cutter, which is an improved cutter ray, or the Mohanda's engine for the Sandbike that you eventually built. And if you're going to spend the time down here and do this rotation, or kind of do a circuit down here, eventually, if you hit this enough times, they will respawn, and you may get duplicates, but you should get all of these, right? And I want these upgraded items. I may not be able to build them right away, but I pick up the recipes, I go back to my base, and I learn the recipes. And then as I accumulate the parts necessary, I do that. So for the intel points, if you had them lock down the research tree, they're going to have you spend them, and you're going to need to, they're going to make sure you have just enough at each stage, pretty much. But I think it's always good to go through these points of interest, these little 3 house icons, and pick up the intel points. You want to clear them and wipe out everybody there so you can fully explore them. Look in every corner, every building, every crevice, and find all the crates and boxes and things like that and spend them. And, those intel points are also places like this one over here. The Dew Gap Gateway has a Stillsuit, and there are multiple pieces, so there's a 25% chance of any specific piece dropping anytime. And you might want to go through that and do that one as well. And the caves have those too. And I'll talk about those a little bit. I will say in general, on the skill points, not the intel points, not the research points, there will be a part of the quest, the guided quest, that says, you know, open up your menu and spend some skill points. And depending on your class, you'll have some stuff available. I do recommend trying to find a passive early on. If you have one available to you, look at the passives, and you can drop one down into your menu because you'll get the benefit of it pretty quickly. You're only going to have 2 slots for quite a while to put your active skills on, and those are going to primarily be whatever your primary class is until you can open up Trooper and maybe you want to move Shigawire. I found myself putting Shigawire on the bar, taking it off the bar, back and forth. So like I'd be out wandering around and I'd want the extra mobility from Shigawire to be able to climb up high and jump up high. And then I would pop, you know, my offense and defensive skills back down there, like when I went into the Eco Lab or someplace like that, or I went to one of these stations. So I think on the skill points, I would hang on to some skill points as I went through HAGGA Basin, because I'm going to unlock the Trooper eventually, and I'm going to unlock the Planetologist eventually, and I like to have some points to spend right away. I like to be able to look at the tree and pick something right off the bat. On the intel points, it's going to be a little more tightly held, which is you're going to have enough to do what they want you to do to progress in the game unless you've unlocked the research tree, in which case I'd say go clear all these out, get all the points you can. That's like 5 times 3, 15 extra points that you can pick up, and then you can really play with what you see in the research tree that you want to do. So that's tip number 4. Tip number 5, and this is related to this, is make the Sandbike a priority. I know a lot of the guides are about rushing to get the Sandbike so you can rush off to the north, but the Sandbike changes this whole area. It collapses it from a perception of distance perspective. This on foot is a long run. You know, going from here to here is a long run. It's not that it's that dangerous. You can hop from island to, you know, from rock island to rock island. It's not like the worm is really going to get you down here unless you're horsing around out here for a long time and doing some silly things. But it's a long distance to do on foot. And so the Sandbike as a priority is a really, really good idea. And you're going to do that. They're going to guide you through the process. I'm not going to tell you about the quest process. And they're going to take you up here to the station. There are going to be contracts you can work. You're going to talk to everybody at the station and get their contracts and do whatever work they want you to do. But in order to get the bike done, you're going to need to go to the Eco Lab. And the good part about this is when you first start off, if you're following the instructions of Zantara, you're going to fight some enemies early on. You're going to learn how to fight 1 or 2 enemies. He's going to have you go through some caves, like these little markers in different places. Those are, you know, there's usually 1 or 2 enemies in there. You can get comfortable with that, hopefully. And if you've prepared, you've got a bunch of bandages and darts and things like that. When you go into the Eco Lab, there's going to be a lot more enemies, but they're going to be in small groups inside rooms. So there might be 1, 2, or 3 inside a room, and you might be able to pull them and get, you know, some of them to come to you and fight them in, you know, in a little more controlled manner, that kind of thing. And so the good news is your skills are going to get, you know, you should get more comfortable with your own combat mechanics and loop for the class that you chose, so that by the time you get to the Eco Lab, a couple steps into this process, you're going to have a quest to go in here. You might have gone up and talked to the Planetologist. He'll give you a quest, and you can go in and do that here. You could also just pick up the item and take it to him later. He'll give you the quest, and you go, oh, I just happen to have that, and you can hand it to him, and that's fine too. But the ability to make a Sandbike is heavily contingent on being able to go into the Imperial testing station or the Eco Lab number 2 and clear it out. Because in here, not only are you going to get the Emperor's Wings, which is a suspensor belt schematic, which is very important. That's inside the Eco Lab. But you're also going to get Sandbike parts and a lot of components that are necessary for you to make additional Sandbike parts. And so once you get that done, do it. And I'm going to add one more part to this particular tip, to tip number 5. And this part is really simple. If you have the Sandbike, you should build the vehicle backup tool. And then you should put it on your hotbar and use it as if it were your life. Now, it's not impossible to build a Sandbike again if you lose it, but the sandstorms will wipe out your Sandbike, and either your base, where you could drive your Sandbike inside your own little building, or the trade center up here are the only places where you can really protect your Sandbike without the backup tool. So if you can unlock the backup tool, make sure you have enough points around the same time that you're making your Sandbike to unlock the backup tool, make one. and then you'll just keep it on your hotbar all the time. Get in the habit of, hop off the bike, turn around, zap it into the backup tool, and then go inside and do whatever you want to do. I found it especially useful out here because, this can be a long trip to wander through here, depending on how you're doing it. And if you can take the Sandbike, put it in the backup tool, go inside and do the cave, come out the other side, drop the Sandbike out, run to the next place, put it away. It's a good habit to get into. So the vehicle backup tool is very useful. I will note that I did lose my bike up in the northern area, racing unsuccessfully the Sandworm, and it really only took me 2 hours to rebuild everything: the bike, the armor, the weapons, things like that. So it's not like the end of the world if your bike gets caught in a sandstorm and you got to make another one. It's just extra stuff to do if you don't want to do that. So, and as I mentioned, tip number 6 is about the trading post. And I'm not going to go into the trading post because the game will take you there, and I think you should listen to it and let it guide you through and just take all the contracts, do everything they'll let you do. I will probably point out that when the game launches on June 5th, the trading post might have an ornithopter pilot. So I'm not suggesting you immediately jump, and pay the ornithopter pilot. I think that's 2,500 Solari. There is a quest that says talk to him and go somewhere. And so there's a point in time where you want to do that, but it's not necessary for the stuff you're doing down here in HAGGA Basin South. So do everything else there. When you leave, before you take off on whatever journey you're doing, you're going to give them some copper at some point in time, and then they're going to give you another mission to come over here to this shipwreck. Make sure you don't forget to go up to the Old Griffin Hideaway and go through here. There's a schematic for a pistol called Way of the Fallen. It's a very nice pistol, and you definitely want to pick that up. And then you can go back to the trade post if your bike is over there and pick it up, or if you don't have a bike, right? You can do that as well. So hopefully by that point you've done the Eco Lab and you've started to talk to the planetologist. And what you're looking at is the trooper contract. This guy has given you a mission to come out here to the right and eliminate some people that offended him. I think that's it. He just doesn't like him for whatever reason. Don't get into it. Just take care of it for him, right? And you should have a quest that'll take you to this location here, which is the shipwreck. This is a PvE shipwreck only. I call this the Great East Loop, and I like it, right? So we've got the Golden Triangle, and then we have the Great East Loop that comes out here. And so at the later stage of this kind of preparation, you're going to be sent to come out here to the Alcyon and then do this trooper contract. And I'm suggesting you just go ahead and make a whole loop, and I'll tell you about that as well, because that's tip number 7 and practically tip number 8 as well. When you're leaving this area, this is one of these interesting little unmarked POIs. And if you climb to the top of this stone here, there's a set of armor that spawns. Piece at a time, you'll have to come back here again and again and again, but you can get an entire set of light armor. Just like over here. Now, I don't think you have to clear anything over here. There's some scavengers on the side. This place, there could be quite a few enemies, and this one spawns the hollower suit, but I would save that for later. It's a Stillsuit. You're going to have I think you can have a basic Stillsuit at this point in time, and you can start to upgrade your armor. This site has PvE enemies that are slightly more powerful than the ones you find like hanging off the sides of cliffs, but it also has materials you need in order to build the guns. So you want to go in there, and you may want to go back there twice. You may want to go in there later after it respawns so that you have all the materials you need in order to start making weapons. Along the way, if you do a full clear of this, you will find a recipe for a knife called Caliph's Drinker, which extracts blood and puts it into blood packs for you as well. Very nice. So at this point in time, once you get the materials out of this, you could go back to your base and start building your weapons. If you find combat to be challenging or it's been a little bit difficult, you can upgrade. Better gun, better pistol, better rifle, better knife. And then if you have your Sandbike, you're still going out this way. I like to make the loop out here with the trooper. It's 3 guys you're going to clear out. There's some nice loot inside here. Once you clear them out, you'll be able to come back to him eventually, and he'll be available to teach you some additional skills. You can go back immediately. His last target is down here, I think. And instead of coming all the way back up to the top, I do tend to come all the way down and around and cross again. There is a leader John up here that you can pick up. I don't remember if it's a recipe or if it's an actual leader John, but there's another location right here. If you climb to the top, there's a crate and you can pick it up. There's more caves that you can go through, and then you can come back through here. And maybe you've done these already. Maybe you're coming back through for the second round because, it's taken you an hour to come through here and they're all refreshed. You can go back to Keyhole Rock. If I think the Broken Stone, you don't need to go. It's worth noting at Broken Stone, and this may or may not still be in it, you can, on your first pass here, pick up an old kind of wrecked Sandbike. and you can use that for a quick escape to get up to the trade post or someplace else. It'll die somewhere in here. It's not worth protecting as far as I'm concerned. But you can pick one up here sometimes. They may have removed that from the game. That's one of those things that if you wait long enough to hear the tip videos and things like that, the developers came out and they said that in the higher regions, they had some broken down ornithopters, or at least one that you could fix up and use. And people were, I don't want to say they were abusing it. They were taking the opportunity, using it, and going farther into the game than they were kind of supposed to during the beta, and they were getting in trouble. They were having problems. So they took some of that out. So it's quite possible that the scrap vehicles that were almost or semi-functional have been removed from the game, or maybe it's just the big ones. And it's possible that the ones that were down here, like the Sandbikes, they've been moved. Maybe they're over here. Maybe they're here. Maybe they're someplace completely different. Maybe they're gone. Don't know. So if you were following a strategy that said there's going to be a Sandbike down here, it might not be here. I'm pretty sure the Aaron's Vengeance rifle, I can't imagine that they would move that as well. So, that's tips 7 and 8, really. They're kind of lumped together, I guess I would say. The Great East Loop, the tip 8 is to continue on and work through the rest of these and keep moving through these as well. And so, that's the guide as I see it. And I think, my overall recommendation, my bonus insight, if it's insightful at all, is that is clearly that there's a lot to do down here. I remember going through this site and feeling like I'd done a lot of it, and the indicator in the corner said I was at 50% or something. There are a lot of things in your research menu that are imperial schematics that are they should be in this zone somewhere, and I didn't find them. And I think there are some people who went out there and hunted them all down. So there are, it's a very reasonable strategy to say, I'm going to go to all these caves. There's nothing special at these little scavenger sites other than scavengers, right? That's fine, right? But the caves, they could have interesting things in them. And, if you go back, if you come through one, I remember I picked up Sim's cutter once, and I went back through later and I got Old Sparky, and I was surprised. And I never went through enough times to get the Mohandas engine, but I believe it was there. I made several trips back and forth into the Alcyon because it was a PvE shipwreck before I started to do some of the PvP shipwrecks to the north to get some resources and make sure I had all the weapons built. So I could do, so I would be in great shape going forward. But by the end of this, and I guess this is the bonus insight, is that you can spend your time in HAGGA Basin. You're getting a lot of value out of the game. You've already paid for the game. You're on the server. You could build yourself a base. I don't really recommend building a complex base because you probably are going to get rid of this later, and you'll build better bases to the north. And they kind of want you to learn and move on here. I get that impression. So building a big base and leaving it down here, I don't know if it's selfish or not. There aren't that many players on the server, but I think the developers probably want you to do that as well. But I wouldn't think twice about spending a lot of time down here, because if you do this and you spend the time, you're going to walk away with 1 to 2 full sets of armor, a pistol, a rifle, a nice blade. You're going to have an upgraded cutter, a Sandbike with a better engine than you can build yourself. You're going to have an upgraded battery pack. You're going to have the Emperor's wings. You're going to have, adequate water storage. And if you've been accumulating water and processing it, you could be carrying around 4 or 5 liter johns full of water at any given point in time and be in great shape. And so when you eventually decide to go north into western and eastern Vermilius Gap, the quest will be there waiting for you. I don't think you're going to miss anything by taking some extra time down here, unless there's a very specific spot to the north that you want to build a base on. And my general impression is people who have very specific spots in the very next section to build a base on, and haven't been to the other zones, and that includes myself. Like, there's spots I liked where my base was in the beta, but I also know that there are a bunch of zones I should be going into, and those could be much better places for bases. I don't know that I'm going to need to come back down here that often. So maybe I want a small base for iron or something like that. Maybe you want a base down there because, you think that your group of friends is going to play in that area for the first 40, 50 hours, and that's a good place for it. But I don't think you're going to miss anything. And when you get to the next section, you can buy some things like the Dew Reaper, because that's going to be more important for gathering water, especially at the time just around dawn. You can actually collect a lot of water up north. You'll get access to iron. You're going to want a better cutter. You might want to buy a better cutter so you can get iron right away. So if you're trying to save a lot of time, there are things you can do to shortcut the process, but you can actually do all those things just by playing the game. So tell me what you think about this. Let me know if you have seen these same locations, if you found something in a different location, if you found something better out there in HAGGA Basin South. I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment below, please. If you are going to, if you're going to rush away from here because you're like, I have had all the HAGGA Basin South I could stand in the beta, and I'm just going north as fast as possible, leave a comment. Tell people why. I think, it's good for people to hear those opinions. And, if you're thinking, this is my first time in the game, I've not played in the beta, or I just kind of dabbled in it, I'm going to spend a bunch of time in HAGGA Basin South, and I'm going to walk out of here, as tanky and well prepared as possible for the next zone. It'll make it slightly easier, right? Each zone is probably going to be a little more difficult as you move up. It's going to be a little more challenging with different armor and weapons that you can build, and opportunities to make your base a little more complex and add more equipment to it and things like that. So with that, thank you very much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. As always, if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of this, hit the subscribe button. You'll know when I'm doing this. I'm going to be streaming this on YouTube at Kineer and on Twitch, dual streaming or multi-streaming at the same time /Kineer Gaming. So you can tune in there. I just hit affiliate over on Twitch, so you can do bits and cheers if you want. I've never seen anybody do that yet. Definitely appreciate the subscriptions over there as well. I am looking at opportunities for people who are supporters of the channel, who have signed up and either joined on YouTube, or who are subscribers, I guess it's subscribers on Twitch, to do some stuff, maybe on a private server. We just found out today, it's incredible news, I think. It wasn't something I was hanging on because I just assumed it was going to take them a lot more time to offer private servers, but Funcom announced today that they have private servers available on the day of launch through G-Portal, through Nitrado, and X-Realm, I think. So three different organizations that already do great work hosting game servers for gamers all over the place are going to be offering Dune Awakening private servers on day one of the head start, which I'm stunned by. It's really cool. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of being in a public server just because there are going to be so many more people there. It feels alive. It's cool. I had some great interactions with people during the beta, just, random people you run into who, they get in a bind and you can go help them out. Or people who are just like, how do you cross the desert? This big expansive desert. You're just like, follow me. Let's hit the gas and go. There's a lot of fun playing on a public server with, people who are just kind of out there having fun. But I can see the value of the private servers as well. And maybe we'll get involved in that and play around with that too. So again, thanks for watching. I'm out of here. This is Kineer.